the flow of power, maritime law, money and control. Throughout history, money and power have been deeply interconnected, shaping economies, governments, and societies. From the ancient seas to today's global financial networks, those who understand and control the rules of these systems wield immense power. At the heart of this relationship is maritime law, a legal framework designed to govern trade and commerce across the seas. This paper explores the origins of maritime law, its evolution, and how it connects to the flow of money and control in modern society. What is maritime law? Maritime law, also known as admiralty law, is one of the oldest legal systems in the world. It was developed thousands of years ago by seafaring civilizations like the Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans to regulate trade and navigation on the seas. The purpose of maritime law. The seas were crucial to early trade and commerce, serving as the highways that connected nations. However, unlike land, the seas were unclaimed territories, making them difficult to govern. Maritime law emerged as a shared legal framework to ensure order and fairness in this unregulated space. Its primary goals were safe trade, to protect ships, goods, and crews from piracy, theft, and fraud; contract enforcement, to create binding agreements between merchants, ensuring trust and reliability; dispute resolution, to provide legal mechanisms for settling conflicts without violence or retaliation. The origins of maritime law. The earliest examples of maritime law date back to ancient Greece, where the Rhodian Sea Code established rules for ship owners and merchants. Later, the Roman Empire expanded these principles, incorporating them into their legal system to regulate their vast trade networks. Over time, these ancient laws influenced the development of maritime law in Europe, eventually shaping the global trade systems we use today.
The evolution of maritime law.
While maritime law was originally designed for seafaring trade, its principles have expanded to influence modern legal and financial systems. Impact on global trade. Maritime law remains essential for regulating international trade, as over 90% of global goods are transported by sea. It governs areas such as shipping contracts, agreements between carriers and shippers for the transportation of goods; insurance, protecting cargo and vessels from damage or loss; environmental regulations, ensuring that shipping practices minimize harm to marine ecosystems; influence on financial systems. The financial systems we rely on today can trace their origins back to maritime law. For example, insurance. Maritime traders pooled resources to cover the risks of shipwrecks and piracy, a practice that evolved into modern insurance. Banking. Early loans and credit systems were developed to fund voyages, leading to the creation of joint stock companies and eventually modern banks. Contracts and liability. Maritime law introduced concepts like shared liability and profit sharing, which are now foundational to corporate law. Sovereignty and jurisdiction. Maritime law also introduced the idea of territorial waters and exclusive economic zones, EEZs, which define a nation's rights over resources in specific maritime areas. These principles continue to shape geopolitics as countries and corporations vie for control of shipping routes, fisheries, and undersea resources. The connection between maritime law and money. Maritime law and the development of currency are closely linked, as trade across the seas required a reliable system of exchange. The birth of currency. In ancient times, bartering was the primary method of trade, but it was inefficient. Seafaring cultures like the Phoenicians solved this problem by creating coins made of precious metals, which became universally accepted as a medium of exchange. These coins symbolized trust in the system and facilitated trade between regions. Early banking practices. Merchants and ship owners developed credit systems to fund voyages, allowing them to invest in long-distance trade without carrying large amounts of physical wealth. These practices laid the groundwork for modern banking and financial institutions.
Who controls the flow of money?
The flow of money is controlled by powerful institutions that regulate trade, finance, and governance. These include banks. Banks are the gatekeepers of money, creating and manage its flow. Central banks, institutions like the Federal Reserve, control the supply of money and interest rates, influencing inflation and economic growth. Commercial banks. These banks lend money, create credit, and profit from interest payments, driving economic activity while accumulating power. Courts. Courts enforce financial laws and resolve disputes, shaping how money flows in society. Admiralty courts, specifically, handle cases under maritime law, including shipping disputes and cargo claims. Governments issue money, tax citizens, and regulate banks. They use monetary policies to control the economy and influence the distribution of wealth. The power of understanding the system. Those who deeply understand and navigate the rules of these systems often gain significant power. They don't just follow the rules, they shape them. Corporate influence. Large corporations hire experts to exploit legal and financial systems. They use offshore accounts, tax havens, and lobbying to maximize profits and minimize taxes. Legal expertise. Wealthy individuals and businesses leverage teams of lawyers to navigate and manipulate regulations, often identifying loopholes. Political lobbying. Corporations and financial elites spend billions lobbying governments to shape policies in their favor. For example, trade agreements and tax laws are often written to benefit large industries rather than ordinary citizens. Criticism of the system. Many argue that the system is rigged to benefit those at the top, leaving the majority at a disadvantage. Complexity. Financial and legal systems are intentionally complicated, making it difficult for ordinary people to understand or challenge them. Inequality. The concentration of wealth among elites perpetuates inequality, as the rich use their resources to maintain and grow their power. Environmental and labor concerns. Maritime trade, while essential, contributes to environmental degradation and often exploits workers in developing nations. Conclusion. Maritime law, money, and control. Maritime law may seem like a relic of the past, but its influence on modern systems of money and power is undeniable. It established the rules for global trade, shaped financial practices, and continues to govern the flow of goods and wealth across the world. Those who understand and control these systems, whether they are governments, corporations, or financial elites, wield immense influence over economies and societies. However, understanding the origins and mechanisms of these systems is the first step toward challenging and reshaping them. The flow of money, much like the currents of the sea, is directed by those who know how to navigate it. By shedding light on these systems, we can begin to demand transparency, fairness, and accountability, ensuring a more equitable future for all.